Discover what happened in Washington on January 6, 2021, according to the official committee in this book summary. In an effort to stop Joseph Biden from being recognized as the victor of the presidential election, a violent mob of demonstrators stormed the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. With the support of the current president, Donald Trump, they did so. The U.S. Congress, which was obviously the target of the attack, determined it was necessary to conduct a thorough forensic investigation into those terrible events because they were so serious. Hence, it established the Select Committee to examine the assault on the U.S. Capitol building on January 6, 2001. The committee, which consisted of 9 House of Representatives members, was led by Mississippian Democrat Benny G. Thompson and served as vice-headed by Wyoming Republican Liz Cheney. There was substantial discussion regarding who should serve on the committee due to the contentious nature of party politics at the time, with frequent discussions between Democrat House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Republican Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. Republicans and Democrats were supposed to share it equally at first, but this proved to be difficult. In the end, there were 2 Republicans and 7 Democrats, including the 2 who had originally voted to create the committee. The committee made sure that a sizable majority of its witnesses were Republicans because it was concerned about potential accusations of prejudice. December 2022 saw the publication of the report. The precise account of the events leading up to and including the attack on the Capitol in this text, which is written in a silent rage, frequently quotes the witness testimony. A substantial body of data supports the January 6 report. We'll go through its main conclusions in this audiobook, but if you want to go deeper, you can locate the complete paper online. The day of January 6, 2021, was particularly repugnant in U.S. history and called for a thorough congressional investigation. We have to go back a few months to get the whole picture. Millions of Americans headed to the polls on November 3, 2020, to participate in one of the most important presidential elections in the nation's history. It's crucial to keep in mind that millions of people had previously cast early and absentee ballots. As it turned out, Democratic rival candidate Joe Biden defeated Republican winner Donald Trump from 2016. Biden won the electoral vote, which determines the winner, by a comfortable majority of 74, and the popular vote by about 7 million votes. Trump, though, resisted accepting the verdict. The peaceful transfer of power had traditionally been a U.S. point of pride. Yet unexpectedly, and in an unusual move, the incumbent president refused to accept the results of the election. He also exhorted others to follow suit. He specifically urged them to express their concerns in person in Washington on January 6, the day Vice President Mike Pence will certify the election results. Therefore, they did. The Capitol was overrun by thousands of Trump supporters, many of whom were armed. They entered the structure, engaged in violent altercations with the police, and yelled, "Hang Mike Pence." Trump, in the meantime, waited in the White House and watched what was happening on TV, refusing to end the attack for a while. Several members of Congress were in immediate danger, not to mention law enforcement. The incidents warranted a thorough investigation by some of the nation's top lawmakers, which is why the special committee was formed. The idea of charging or arresting Trump was never on the table because the committee itself lacked the legal authority to do so. Nonetheless, it did send the Department of Justice a number of thorough criminal referrals documenting the alleged offenses he had committed. In the following parts, we'll walk you through the narrative of the report, starting with the election and ending with the attack's aftermath, before detailing the committee's recommendations for what should happen next. Donald Trump lied and obstructed justice after realizing he had lost the 2020 election. Many persons are involved in this story. One man, though, is at the core of it all. Without him, none of this would have occurred. The study makes it abundantly evident that Donald Trump was the catalyst for these events. So let's begin with the election itself, which at least in one way went as expected. For whatever reason, Republican voters typically choose casting their ballots in person, whereas Democrats are much more inclined to use alternative acceptable procedures, such as postal voting. Also, the results of such ballots take longer to tally. So, it was widely expected that in this relatively tight presidential election, Trump would appear to have a lead at first, but that advantage would diminish as more absentee ballots were counted. This expectation included President Trump's own campaign team. Just by virtue of the way the votes were counted, the outcome would seem to be getting closer. That was made very obvious to the president of this. Yet when it occurred, he pretended to be shocked. He claimed a fraud on the American public in a speech on November 4, the day following the election, while ballots were still being counted. He also tweeted, "Stop the count," early the following morning, which was against the law. This was just the first of many assertions Trump would make questioning the legitimacy of the election in the following months. He claimed that containers stuffed with phony Biden votes had been counted. He said that thousands of votes were cast in Georgia by the dead. He made numerous assertions that Dominion voting devices were tampered with. The president had been directly informed that each of these allegations was bogus, but he continued to make them despite the fact that they were all unjustified. He merely landed on another conspiracy theory when he eventually moved on from one. William Barr, the Attorney General, compared attempting to stop him to playing whack-a-mole. So, establishing the election result was false was stage one. Even though Trump had failed to accomplish that, he nevertheless moved on to step two and stopped the transfer of authority. The vice president is the one who formally receives the electoral college votes, as stated in the Constitution. The VP's function is mostly uncontested legally. They make sure the votes are counted but may have no further impact than that. Some votes cannot be refused to be counted. Vice President Pence was aware of and honored this. And Trump was repeatedly told that Pence was powerless, according to various sources. Trump, though, continued to put pressure on Pence to contest the count. And he even tweeted it on January 6, the day Pence was supposed to gather and certify the count. "All Mike Pence has to do is send them back to the states, and we win." Pence declined to cooperate. Ivanka Trump, who is her father's daughter, afterwards heard him refer to Pence as the P word, according to her aides. The ramifications for Pence were almost much worse when the protesters flooded the Capitol. Trump used a variety of strategies, such as forging election documents and meddling in state legislatures and the Justice Department. Trump's main proposition wasn't just that Pence would annul the election results. He and a couple of his team members went one step farther. They created official paperwork attesting to Trump victory in 7 states, including Wisconsin and Michigan, which Biden won. The team produced the documents, collected several signatures from fictitious voters, and delivered them to locations including the National Archives and Mike Pence's office, while well aware that fabricating electoral slates was prohibited. One tweet stated, "He called us all to the Capitol and wants us to make it wild." The president can't exactly openly advise you to revolt, other online publications remarked. The closest he will ever get is now. One of those who begged him repeatedly to specifically declare that January 6 should remain peaceful was Hope Hicks, a member of the president's team. He rejected the proposal. Trump gave a speech at a rally that day in the Ellipse, close to the White House. He repeatedly expressed his fury that the collected throngs weren't larger to his assistance. Why not? Due to the fact that many of the supporters who had arrived were refusing to go through the magnetometers at the entrance because they were armed. An assistant named Cassidy Hutchinson recalls the president asking to remove the magnetometers. "I overheard the president say something to the effect that I don't find care that they have weapons," she informed the committee. "They aren't come to harm me, they say." According to other accounts, he was equally furious that he couldn't personally lead the protesters on their march to the Capitol after the gathering. Nonetheless, he gave in on this matter at least and left for the White House. He wrapped up his address about noontime. Trump was informed that the attack on the Capitol had begun at 1:25 p.m. The president responded, "Oh really," when informed. "Well, let's go have a look. Up until 4:03 p.m., we don't know for sure what occurred." Nobody could locate the formal records of Trump's calls, and the White House photographer appeared to have been instructed to leave. The 187 minutes that Trump refused to put an end to the biggest riot at the Capitol in generations are referred to in the report as this time frame. Everyone knew Trump was the only person who could end the disturbance, from Ivanka to Fox News commentator Sean Hannity, and they all attempted to convince him. But he fired out another tweet at 2:24 p.m., this time blaming Pence specifically. Obviously, this only made the situation worse. Ivanka ultimately experienced little success. Following their discussions, Trump tweeted a few times urging people to remain peaceful. They didn't go home because he didn't call for them to. The fighting persisted. He didn't send a video message instructing the assailants to go home until 4:17 p.m., which was 187 minutes after the event finished. They immediately complied. Trump finished his shift at 6:27. He ended by saying, "Mike Pence let me down," to a coworker. Although the special committee was unable to accuse Trump of any crimes, they did encourage others to do so. The committee's report contains more than just a summary of what transpired leading up to and on January 6. It also takes the causes, or rather, the cause, into account. The investigation makes it abundantly evident that Donald Trump was the primary cause of the incident. The report specifically recommends the matter to the House Ethics Committee and the Department of Justice Special Committee, both of which have the authority to formally charge the subject. Obstruction of an official process, which refers to his attempts to obstruct Mike Pence's electoral vote tally by calling a riot, is one of the offenses it thinks he committed. Trump was attempting to change a presidential election outcome of which he had been fully and truthfully informed, according to the committee, which is self-evidently the case here and meets the legal requirement that obstruction be done for a corrupt motive. The committee advises charging Trump with conspiracy to defraud the United States because of his attempts to stop Joe Biden from being declared the winner of the election. Conspiracy to make a false declaration is another offense, and the committee contends that those fraudulent election certificates were the most blatant example of this. Last but certainly not least is the legislation that outlaws abetting, encouraging, or instigating an uprising. The committee claims that Trump further violated this rule by calling out and fueling up the mob to the extent that he did, and then by inciting them even more an hour after the incident started. The president said, "Well, Kevin, I guess these folks are more furious about the election than you are," in response to Kevin McCarthy, the minority leader of the House of Representatives, who asked him to order the rioters to leave on January 6. These are the main accusations made in the report, along with a few more potential accusations of criminal behavior that could potentially apply to other members of Trump's campaign who either collaborated with him or refused to cooperate with the committee. The committee's chairman, Benny G. Thompson, claims in the report's foreword that casting a ballot in a U.S. election is an act of hope and faith since it is done with the expectation that the process will be fair. Making sure that anyone who threatens this will suffer penalties is the only way to ensure that this link is not severed. The substitute? Tyranny. 9 members of the House of Representatives worked together to compile the report, which provided a remarkably complete and objective account of what took place on that momentous day. The committee's conclusions claimed that Donald Trump, the outgoing president, breached multiple laws as a result of the attack on the Capitol, which was validated by their findings. It also suggested that he be prosecuted in order to guarantee that this never occurs again.